Mr. Baryshnikov, welcome to the Netherlands, and
Thanks.
thank you very much for giving a few minutes of your time to our team, Dance to Film. Mr. Baryshnikov, as a dancer, you have been adored by millions of people around the globe, not just for your graceful dancing and technique, but also for your personality on stage as an exceptional actor. Would you be so kind to tell to our Dutch artistic audience how different it is to work with Mr. Krymov, how different it is from your previous works?
This project came a couple of years ago. It's been developed very slowly. I've met Dmitry Krymov in New York. We had mutual friends, and I've seen at that time already a few of his pieces in the video, and I was really taken by them. It's very, he's an unusual director. We would just get to know each other socially, and sort of our friendship began in the United States. And at some point, just out of nowhere, he observed the way I work, you know, in our center in New York, in our foundation, and sort of observing me, my behavior, I guess, you know, and he proposed this work, a very short story by great Russian writer, immigrant writer who lived, you know, in exile in France after the revolution, Ivan Bunin, Nobel Prize laureate, and, you know, that's a very famous collection of short stories called Dark Alleys. You know, there's a 6-page or 7-page story called In Paris, story of a white Russian army general who lives in Paris now in exile, who been kicked off out of Russia by the Red Army, meets a very young woman in a Russian restaurant, twice younger than himself, and their relationship begins. It's a very simple story. They fell in love, she moves in, he dies in the end, you know, reading newspapers in the Parisian metro. His style is very unusual. There's a movement, there's a little bit of dance, which a good friend and great choreographer Alexei Ratmansky helped us to sort of glue those things together. And here we are. We had just started in Finland, and it was an interesting experience to do this on audience. It plays in Russian and in French with subtitles. And that's, but to work is back to original question, you know, being a dancer and stepping on stage as an actor, I don't see much difference in dynamics of it, because he's working very methodically, like a good choreographer, very instinctively. He prepares his homework, and he comes very prepared. And for him, in fact, kind of text, it's a kind of kind of secondary, if you want. First, he sets up a poetic image. It's a poetic collage, kind of, you know, and he wants the most important thing to evoke in moods of that time, and especially moods of the people who were defeated, lonely, and in a country of a very difficult time for themselves, you know, and that kind of adjust inevitable solitude, loneliness, and their relationships are based on that self-discovery and discovery of each other. You know, it's a sad story, but very romantic and very hard kind of same time story.
What do you think the audience should expect from this performance? What, of course, the team of this collaboration, it's an exceptional team, starting with the Nobel Prize winner, the author, Mr. Ivan Bunin, and then of course the very well-known director, very well known for his theatrical excellence, and of course with your iconic name.
Don't exaggerate about that iconic name. It's
you
just,
do have an iconic name. Sure. One would think that this is already enough attraction to bring the audience to this performance, to this play. What else beside the team? What else the audience should expect and should experience? In your opinion, artistically, where are you aiming with this collaboration?
Well, to reach the audience, that's what we are, trying to do. The director trying to reach. He wants to the audience experience the same sentiment which he's planning to deliver, and we are just instruments in his hands. I'm working with phenomenal actress, young woman, Russian, Anna Sinyakina, who are, I understand, the big star in Moscow. She's works sometimes on television and cinema. She's well known. She's extraordinary actress and phenomenal singer. They're all singers. They're all musicians. For me, it's an easy task when somebody in front of you delivers that pure message. I'm just reacting in her remarks. She makes my life much more simpler on stage.
What attracts you to acting? Do you see acting on stage, do you see it as a replacement of dance?
Well, this particular project, it's about people I knew and people I know. It's in this character, it's a reflection of my father. He was also in military. People whom I knew, the immigrants of that time, I've met them. A lot, actually. The language, which is really, I'm rediscovering, Russian language, because it goes half in French, half in Russian, which is a pleasure, just pleasure to pronounce in a way. It's of course easier to act for me in Russian than in English or in French, although in French I kind of getting a bit better, because I spoke French before I studied English. I arrived in the United States with Russian and French. It's a very, very poignant and very touching personal experience. That's why I like it.
Right. It's not that it's a replacement of your dance experience.
No, I danced, I danced recently, like 3 years with Anna Laguna, which was really totally extraordinary experience of working with Mats and Nicholas Ek, and working with Ratmansky and Mark Morris and a lot of great choreographers. I've done it. Of course, there's always few people I didn't have a chance work, like Iri Kilian, for example. I admire this man, and he's a great guy, and his wife, for example. If it would be a project, I would be, love doing it. That's you cannot sit in few chairs same time. That's why I put my dance shoes in the box, for a while, and I put the heels under me, not high heels, but normal the street shoes.
I will quote a few of your words that you mentioned in 2004.
I said many stupid things.
Then you said that you think at the time you got disappointed a little bit with New York City and the United States, because sometimes when you visit Europe, you feel this good old socialism in its good part of it. You see the public concern about art, you see more young people, young faces in the audience, And of course, you didn't agree with the high prices of attending a performance of the opera of $150, etc. You find the artistic life in the United States, particularly New York, quite commercial.
You know, what I said in 2004, I surprisingly agree with myself, which doesn't happen very often, may I add. But you know, I start to perform in smallish theaters quite a few years ago. We started to do with my White Oak Dance project, with Mark Morris, with the live music, or it's a trio, or it's the piano solo a tour, and recently with Matt Ek and Anna Laguna and Nicholas Ek. Much smaller theaters, much smaller venues. Well, again, repeating myself, you know, those glimpses of socialist setups, or it's of Sweden, or it's France, or Madrid, or elsewhere, when the tickets are available for young people, 20, 30 euros. It's extraordinary pleasure to see young people in the audience, which rarely, but really rarely you see in the United States. Considering the prices on Broadway, at the Metropolitan Opera or ballet, you know, nothing one can do about it, you know, and that's why my center, you know, in New York, my foundation are built to help young people create art, and affordable art, and show it to we have tickets for 15, 20 bucks, you know, at our center. You know, if it's not a performance of Peter Brook, we sometimes co-produce with the other theater companies, then they are, you know, $50, $60. Or our resident company, it's Wooster Group, Elizabeth LeConte, great director. It's probably pride of North American avant-garde theater, which is they perform in our center, you know, 3-4 months out of the year. This extraordinary experience, and the people are lining in line, you know, around to get in. You know, in the last hour you could get cheaper seat, you know, and you know, we're trying to do something good for young people and young artists. But there is, of course, you know, there's a lot of hurdles, you know, in our society, in American society. But there is advantages to be an American, because you could start pretty much without any problems administratively, like in Europe, your own project. You have to go and struggle and raise money and start your own company and build your own base. Bureaucracy in Europe is overwhelming and upsetting. You know, you have to go through the l'escalier de victoire. You have to go to this person will send you that, then to ministry, under the ministry, and then they'll send you to the accounting thing and this. Oh, this is it's impossible here, what's possible there. Over there, pretty much everything possible if you're smart, if you have a good heart and energy. That's why I love that country, although we have huge problems still with the racism, with the fights between Democrats and Republicans, you know, about taking care of education of young people, art education, and the pure hunger. The richest person, richest country rather, in the world are, you know, millions of people uninsured. It's just tragedy and stupidity. And we are spending all this money on wars, you know, and I am a big supporter of President Obama. And I hope he will win again and he will fight for all of us.
Mr. Baryshnikov, thank you very much again for this interview. It was our pleasure to be here with you, and we wish you a great success with the continuation of this tour.
Thanks.